Okay, hello everyone. I hope you guys are doing fine. As I've said before, today's class is going to be with a different structure. Andrea from Palqee Technology is going to talk about how a data privacy management software would help a DPO. So we are gonna take your questions during the presentation. So please use the Q&A section. And at the end of the presentation, then Andrea will answer those questions. Andrea, welcome, and thank you very much for being here with us today.
Thank you very much, Marcio, for the introduction. Thank you, Get Global, for the invitation. Yeah, so let's jump into it. Quickly, what I'm going to talk today about with you is about privacy operation software, and basically, what does that mean? What those tools are supposed to do? How they help privacy officer in the day-to-day job? What you should look for when choosing what tool to work with? Then I'm going to jump into the actual tool and show a little bit how the product works and how you can navigate through the software. And at the end, as Marcio already anticipated, we're going to have some questions and answers session. So I'm going to turn off my camera for now, just so I can focus on the slides. But yeah, in the end, I'm going to be back with the images so we can go through the questions and answers. So, all right. Starting with the definition, privacy operations software. What do I mean by privacy operations software? Privacy operations, we call privacy operations every activity you have to do within an organization to comply with the data protection regulations. That means any interview you have to do with your workforce to map whatever processes you have to map, any report you have to prepare to fulfill data subject rights or data subject requests, any report you have to prepare for the regulator who is asking you to show if you comply or not with that specific regulations. So all those activities is what we call privacy operations. And those tools, they facilitate, they help you navigate through those activities. And in fact, they're proven to reduce by half the time required to comply with personal data management within an organization. Jumping into the agenda. So how this section the session is structured today. I'm going to give you a quick intro about who are we, Palqee Technologies, about myself, Andre. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the challenges that we've encountered working with companies in Europe, in the US, and also in Brazil over the last 2 years. Then I'm going to jump into the platform, talk a little bit about processes and data mapping, which is the first module I want to show you. The second one is going to be consent management. I want to show you our proprietary platform that we call Active Consent for managing consent. Then we're going to go into data subject rights. And finally, talk a little bit about the admin part of those tools, how you can manage access, how you can extract reports, so on and so forth. So that's the plan we have for today. This session is intended to be an hour and a half, and then we have half an hour at the end for questions. I would ask all of you, if you have questions, either write in the Q&A or wait until the end, write in a piece of paper, wherever you have at hand, so I can go through all of this at the end of the presentation. Okay, so a little bit about us. Palqee Technology, we are a privacy tech company. We have offices in the UK, in the US, and in Brazil. I am the Chief Privacy Officer of Palqee Technologies, and we like to say we're building the tools of the future for privacy professionals, with privacy by design and by default in all the products we developed. A little bit of my education. I'm an engineer by education. I've also studied in the USA and in China. I've started working for Accenture as a systems information and technology consultant, deploying SAP and Oracle solutions across different industries. After that, I've moved into Nissan to help them develop their IT infrastructure for the first manufacturing plant in South America. And that was the time when I started working with privacy and the intersection between privacy and technology, offering consulting for across different industries, education, property management, and also the military. Then a big piece of work with the Royal Navy here in the UK. And finally, last year, I've joined Palqee as a Chief Privacy Officer. The next slide is a little bit about the work we've done. All our team members, they are certified by accredited institutions, the IAPP, EXIN, and also our own Palqee certification program. I'm also a member of the Association of National Data Privacy Professionals in Brazil. And those are some of the companies that our team members have worked with in the past. So I've done quite a lot of work in different industries. We've seen quite a lot of things that I expect to share with you today, and how that tool can help you navigate through all those challenges. Quickly, before we jump into the platform, I wanted to talk about the content you're seeing here today. This content is the same content we offer in more detail in our certification program. Basically, that certification program helps you keep pace with any changing data protection requirements and how you can efficiently deliver the value within the organization. So it's not a certification to certify you as a lawyer or as a specialist in the regulation, but it's a certification to ensure that you know how to perform the privacy operations, the activities you have to perform within a business. And the certification program is delivered by our partners. Get Global is one of them. So if you're more interested, just get in touch with them and can have more information about that later. All right, so straight to the point, second part of our session. How do we how the platform helps you managing all the activities that DPO and privacy professionals go through? So the challenge we've encountered in the last couple of years, it spans across different areas of the business, and basically those privacy operations, they happen in silos. It takes a lot of time for privacy professionals to execute those activities, and they end up being very expensive for businesses simply because of the time it takes. So quickly run through all of those. Marketing, obvious first thing you have to do is manage consent from those individuals and employees as well in your organization. And when we talk about consent, we're not only talking about cookies and websites, but we're also talking about managing consent for internal processing activities you have in the business. For example, monthly newsletter or R&D, any data you process within the organization that is not related to the website, that also needs to be controlled, and you need consent, unless you have a different legal basis, if it's a contract or a different one. But we're going to go in detail in the platform later. Second one is the IT department. You have to be in constant connection with the IT department to review policies and procedures of any new software they implement, of any new partner they bring on board. You also have to be in constant connection with process owners to understand if there is a new process in the business, if there's a new system, if a new intern joined the business. So it also requires a lot of time and effort to do. On the left-hand side, the last one we have is employees. It goes together with process owners, basically DPIA, so data protection impact assessment. Every new project you have in your organization, you need to ensure that your employees know what they're doing, there's no impact, and that is through executing the DPIAs. On the right-hand side, we go the regulators part. Regulators, you never know when they're going to knock on your door. They can surprise you at any given time, and you need to have at hand compliance reports to show them you're doing all those activities in the right way. So that's something it takes a lot of time also to build, and if you're not prepared, the fine can be quite high, as I'm sure you already know. The consumer side, then you have the data subject requests. They can contact you to access the data, to ask you to delete their data, or to amend. So depending on the regulation, there are different subject rights you have to fulfill. That also is time consuming. And finally, vendors and suppliers, they go side by side. But basically, you have to review all their policies and ensure the data processing agreements you have with them, either a software vendor or could be a supplier that moves goods, a logistics supplier, and any kind of relationship you have with businesses. You have to ensure you can review and everything is in compliance. So just looking at this slide, you can see the size of what we call privacy operations is a very time-consuming activity that we try to facilitate and we try to streamline through technology and through software. Okay, so going then into the platform, how I want to structure this, as I mentioned in the beginning. First, we're going to talk about processes and data mapping, which is the first step towards having that visibility you need in the organization. So when we talk about process and data mapping, that means understanding what is happening in each department, understanding what systems are being used, what data is being collected, for how long that data is being stored, what is the legal basis you have as an organization to process that information, so on and so forth. And how the platform helps you, we can break down that section and that module in 4 different main activities. The first one is interview. The platform offers you interview templates. I'm going to show you in a minute. And those templates, they're built according to data privacy regulations globally. We work with law firms as partners. We have also consultants as partners, and all of those people, they help input that information in the platform to ensure that all templates you have are always up to date, and you can rely on those templates to streamline your work. And those platforms usually not only work with regulatory templates, but anything related to that topic. What I mean by that is you can also send an interview about knowledge to understand if your organization knows what GDPR is, what CCPA is, or what LGPD is. You can also test training, if they are offering training in the right direction, if it's consistent with your privacy activities. So there are different types of interviews you can conduct. And in order to make an assessment and generate insights from those interviews, it's very helpful to have a tool, because you don't want to have to go through hundreds of interviews to be able then to put together a summary. And the platform helps you facilitate and kind of generate those insights along the way. The second one is workforce engagement. One of the biggest problems we've identified so far is that sometimes if C-level executives or managers, they are not really engaged in the privacy program, you're going to have a hard time trying to implement those practices and perform your work in the end of the day. So tools like that help you also engage with C-level executives, because they send reminders, they have their own portal where they can access, they can see how the project is progressing. So all those different activities that you offer to the workforce increase engagement as well. Going then into the data mapping part, most of the tools you'll find in the market, they offer already data flow and data mapping connectors and plugins that goes together with data discovery. And what those plugins do, they connect the platform you're using, in this case, Palqee, what I'm talking about, connect to your system. So if you use, just gonna give some examples, SAP, Salesforce, or MailChimp, whatever software you already use, it connects to the privacy operations software, so you can automatically understand what data is flowing through your organization. Work that otherwise you'd have to do manually through interviews and talking to hundreds of people, and would still not be as reliable, because there's always the human factor, the human error. People may forget what they use, or they may not see in a different way. So it's very important that you automate as much as possible the data discovery process. And the last one is about built-in data discovery plugins, which is similar to what I mentioned before, but those plugins, they're already built in the platform, which means every time your organization comes up with a new process or decides to adopt a new software, the privacy operations tool should identify automatically and should connect automatically to that system, so we do not have to do that manually. So those are the 4 pillars that we talk about when we talk about process and data mapping. Just gonna now share my screen with you so you can see in reality how the platform would look like. Just bear with me 1 second. I assume you can all see my screen now, right? If you have any problem, just write in the chat, but I'm gonna proceed. So that's the first module. What I'm showing you here now is the interview part. What I was talking about in the beginning, how you can build those interviews and make sure that your workforce is engaged to answer whatever you need to know, and how you can generate insights quickly and efficiently without having to go through hundreds of emails or spend months to collect that information. So the first thing you're going to do in this tool is you can either create a survey, which we call survey, it's an interview, or we can create an audience. The beauty of this is that you can create specific audiences depending on your needs. So if you're talking about, for example, mapping processes within different departments in your organization, what you want to do here is you want to create an audience for managers. And in that audience, you're only going to have managers, and they're going to receive that interview because it's related to them. And at a different point in time, you can create an audience specifically for the IT department, which means everyone within the IT department, they're going to receive that interview. So you can specify exactly who is your target audience here and what is the survey you're going to send to them. So I'm going to move on and create a survey. As I mentioned before, you can have regulatory surveys that are related to data protection regulations, or you can have custom templates that are related to other topics around data protection. So just for the purpose of demonstration, I'm going to create a data mapping survey. And here you can choose what regulation you want to work with. Different platforms offer different regulations. For this example, I'm going to show you GDPR and the LGPD, but obviously you can add more. If you come here, you can add, for example, CCPA, and that's going to unlock for you different templates you can use for that regulation. So I'm going to move on and then select the regulation. You can see here, for example, I've added data mapping as a topic. You can also add policies and procedure, third-party vendors. So any topic that is related to that regulation, you're going to be able to add to the survey you want to send. And you can also merge different regulations because, for example, if you have an international organization, you have to comply with LGPD, but also GDPR. You do not want to be sending the same survey twice or the same questions 3 times. Just in terms of engaging people, that's not a good practice. So what you want to do is you want to merge as much as possible those questions. And what those platforms allow you to do is to exactly do that. There's an intelligence that merges those questions, so we can efficiently send those surveys out. So in this example, I'm going to send data mapping questions about these 2 regulations and policies and procedures about the LGPD. I'm going to come here and then send. At this point, I have not created an audience yet, so it's going to ask me to create an audience. And it jumps to the audience section. And here, what you want to do is to understand who is going to receive that interview. I'm going to put an audience name just for the sake of demonstration, audience group 1. I'm going to add the employees from my company that I want to receive the survey. I have here Justin Rose as an example. I'm going to add Lara Brock as a second example. So I'm just going one by one. I think my computer is a little bit slow, so bear with me while I'm navigating through the screens. And then you also have the option to add in bulk. So if you already have a list of employees, you do not want to type one by one, you come here, you upload your CSV, and it's going to allow you to import all the contact details of your organization you have. And there you go, you're ready to go. Then what you're going to do now is you want to come back to your interview that you created already. You have here as a draft. I'm going to go then and get inside my interview, and I'm going to go back and send. Now that I already have created an audience, I'm going to select the audience I want to receive that interview. And from here, I'm going to select what is the expired date of that interview. Going back to what I mentioned before, engaging with the workforce. Oftentimes, people really, they leave privacy activities to the back of their agenda. So from the moment you're able to set up a deadline, Palqee or any privacy tool you're using is going to be able to remind them in emails or whatever option you choose that they have to help you to navigate through those. So that's a very important engagement tool within your organization. From the moment your interview is sent out, all the employees you added to the audience should receive. And what they're going to do is they have the interface I'm showing you here now, which is the employee interface. So in this interface, what's going to happen is your employee is going to log into the platform, and that's the dashboard they're going to see. So the first thing they see is the DPO contact details, in this case, yours or whatever privacy professional that is leading the privacy operations in the company. And on the left-hand side, they can see what are the interviews they have to answer to. So the one I've just sent, just quickly to give an example, they're going to reply what process they participate, because we're talking about data mapping, what are the data subjects that they are dealing with, what are the systems they use, and just put some examples here. The next step would be what are the data elements, or what is the information they're collecting from those data subjects, what is the source of the data. So basically the platform is going to talk them through all the steps instead of you as a DPO having to sit with them, explain what you need. Everything is done by the software, so you really invest and focus your time on what is important at that point in time. Once that interview is completed, you also have the option to add any external or additional questions you want. Here you can see, obviously, it's all the same question, but the purpose of this is to show you what are the different type of questions you can add. You have multiple choice, you have checkbox, you have drop down, have rating as well. So it's really flexible. You can add whatever you want as part of your privacy program. I just want to make a side note. I should mention that as well. This is a demo environment. So all the information and the data you're seeing here is mock data. There's no real data. So just so you know why it's repetitive, the questions is the purpose of demonstration only. Once then your employee completes that part of the survey, they're going to submit. And that answer is going to be sent to you as a privacy officer through the platform. And then you're going to be able to already see insights in the dashboard. So this dashboard here tells you, for example, what is the engagement of the workforce until that point. So we have 25% that already have replied to my interview. You can see that half of your workforce is processing personal identifiable information. You can also see how many days on average take for an employee to reply to your interview or web activity you're conducting. And another great thing I think from those platforms is that you can automate those surveys. So obviously you want to have a program of continuous compliance. And what does that mean? That means that every 6 months, for example, you want to send a new interview to ensure that every new process or every new system that was added to the organization, you can have visibility. So we can automate those surveys. So the employee can reply to them and you can have that feedback automatically, so you don't have to create a new survey. You do not have to contact them again. That's already planned for you. And you can see your scheduled surveys in this tab. And after you've then sent the surveys, you've collected the answer, what you want to do now is to analyze. How do I analyze those answers and how do I actually get insights from it? So what you have to do here is you go to view answers, and you have this view from a specific interview you've conducted. So the first step, what you're going to see is a summary. The summary means you can see those blue boxes here. Those blue boxes tell you how many people replied the same answers. So for example, in my sales department, I have 4 people that replied to the survey. In my marketing department, I have 5, so on and so forth. And within the sales department, I have 3 people that told me they work with time management process, and 1 person that replied he or she works with time tracking. And it may sound a little bit odd because those processes should be the same, but people give different names to different processes sometimes. So that's why we have in the end the data map tab. I'm gonna get there soon. That allows you to exactly correct and write things the way you think is right. So we have a final version of the data map for you, DPO, to work with moving forward. You can also sort the table by whatever field you want, business processes or departments, so it's easy to visualize. The second tab, you have the respondents, which is basically everyone that replied to that interview. The third tab is individual responses, that you can see a specific person, what was the answer of that person. If you have someone you know, it's a reliable source of information, and you want to trust that person first and foremost, you can go straight to that person and see what that person has replied. And finally, as I said, you have the data map, which is the version you're gonna have for yourself. Once you go through the summary, review everything, and here you can edit the answers that were given to you. So if I go quickly here and edit, allows me to rename a process, allows me to change a system, so you can build your own version of the data map based on the summary you have collected from the interviews. So from this moment, what you have is a data map, but that data map is not automated, right? What you did was you interviewed people, they replied to you, you saved a lot of time managing those interviews, and now what you want to do, you want to automate that process. The next step would be then you go to the data inventory. In the data inventory part, what you're going to see here is all the systems that you have identified through the service or through the interviews, they're going to appear automatically in your screen. And through connectors, what we call connectors, those are plugins for data discovery. Those plugins, they're going to automatically scan those systems, and they're going to find what data is being pulled from those systems and how often and what of this data is sensitive data. So that allows the software to cross the answers you're having from the interviews with the answers that are coming from the automation. So you not only rely on one source anymore, but you cross those 2 sources, giving you a more accurate view of what is happening in your organization. The same thing, you have assets here, but you also have processes. You can do the same thing with processes. You see here all the processes that came from the interviews, and then you can see the legal basis, you can see the owner of that process, so on and so forth. So that's what we call data inventory. And if any point in time in the future you run again an interview, and that interview identifies there's a new system that it was found but is not yet connected, it's going to show you those alerts. And through those alerts, you can just come here and connect whatever asset you want to the software. And when I say asset, I'm not talking only about systems, but I'm talking also about physical assets. You have laptops, you have archives, external HD. All those things, they need to be mapped out in order to become fully compliant. And obviously, depending on the device or the system, you're going to use different softwares to allow you to do that data discovery and data mapping. And finally, to complete the first section of this presentation, what I want to show you is the data visualization part. So at this point in time, you've interviewed everyone, you know processes, you know systems in your organization, you already connected all those systems, so you know what data is being transferred through those systems. And now you have to generate reports, right? You have to comply, you have to show to regulators that you're compliant. So what you want to do, and I think that's mostly important also for specific regulations that require you to keep sensitive data within specific geographies. You're not allowed to transfer sensitive data outside of the country. The data visualization part allows you to visualize what type of data is leaving the country and where they are flowing through. If you click on a country, for example, you can see details of what type of assets you have in that specific geography, where is that importing from, where is exporting to, what is the percentage. You can also filter up here sensitive data, or you want to see all the data, you can do that as well. You can filter by process, so there's a very granular level of filter you can use. And you can quickly from here generate reports as well. That's going to allow you to, again, if the regulator's knocking your door, to quickly show that you're compliant. And on the other side, we have also the people, what we call people map, which is some people call data lineage, but we like to call people map because it's a simple term, like avoiding a little bit of jargon within the software to make it easy for everyone to navigate through it. Here, what you can see is the flow of information. So you can see, for example, from your prospects, where the data is being collected, where it's being processed, where it's being stored, and finally, what departments have access to that data. And at any part of this process, the software allows you to quickly see what are the major risks. So for example, I see here between the collection in MailChimp and the processing in Salesforce, there is a risk here. So I'm going to click here, and then it's going to show me details about that specific asset. I can see general information. I can see what data elements are coming from that system, what are the processes that I have in that system, so on and so forth. So I have a very granular level of detail again. And usually those softwares, they're all interconnected. So no matter where you click on the screen, it's going to take you to that relevant part of the system. So even if you do not know exactly how the software works, it's very intuitive to navigate through it. And I think that's all for this section. I think I've covered everything from data mapping and data discovery. I'm going to stop sharing now and go back to the presentation. Right. I think you all can see my screen. If you cannot, just shout in the chat box.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thank you, Marcio. Right. So sorry, just taking a sip of water. Next part of the presentation. So now what we have is we have mapped all the processes. We have mapped all the systems, the data. We have beautiful reports we can generate to show we are compliant. We understand where the data is flowing. The next thing we want to do is to manage consent. Obviously, you want to engage with the individuals you interact with. You want to give them the rights they have, but also with your internal workforce, your employees, they also have rights as individuals. So how do you manage those rights in terms of managing consent? Well, what those software usually do is they help you manage legal basis, not only for cookies, but also for processing activities. As I mentioned before, I'm going to get in more level of detail soon on that. They also allow you to manage direct communication with individuals. That means you can use our own application. I'm talking specifically here about what we Palqee as a company we offer at this stage. You're going to find different tools in the market, and each one of those tools, obviously, they offer more or less features and functionalities. But in a broader scheme of things, you're going to find similar functionalities across all those platforms. And you can, going back to this point, manage direct communication with those individuals. You can enable extra channels instead of them calling you or emailing you or knocking even in your door to ask you to delete their data. They can maybe go through your website or through the application, and that increases trust because they see they have different ways to reach out to you, and then you're going to act right away instead of being a month's process. You have to wait and you don't really understand what's happening. So that is a good action for your brand, which takes us to the last point, which is ethical personal data management as a competitive advantage. So similar to what happened, let's say, with sustainability a few years ago, companies that started to jump into the sustainability wave, they kind of created that competitive edge. And the same thing is happening with privacy today. The more compliant you are, the more connected to your consumer, to individuals you are, you have that competitive advantage against your competition in the market. So let's jump then into it. Let me show again the platform. I'm going to go now through the consent management part of the software. 1 second. Perfect. So consent management. I'm starting here with the summary. That's basically the dashboard. You can see here on the left-hand side, you have all the modules I was mentioning. The data map we've been through already. Now we're going to go in active consent. Consent management we can break down in 2 parts. The first part is the consent for processes or processing activities that are happening within your organization. So how those software work is everything, as I mentioned, is interconnected. So because you already know what processes you have in your company from the data map, they automatically are going to appear in your consent management part of the platform. And here you can see, based on the sensitive data you're collecting, based on the legal basis you've defined before, you're going to see what is necessary for your operations. That means you do not need to get consent because you have a different legal basis. Or you're going to see what is preference from the individual, which means you do have to get consent for that specific activity. And it's a preference of the individual if they allow you to do that or not. On the other side, the second part is cookie consent management, which is what's happening in your website, what you're tracking, what you're using. So here you can quickly see different types of categories of cookies from different websites. So if you're an organization that manages different websites across different countries or different products, maybe you have a website for each product, you can have a quick overview of everything that's happening across all those pages. The country they're hosted at, what is the IP address, the language, so on and so forth. Here on the top, you have a quick insights dashboard, allows you to see, for example, in the cookie part, how many what is the percentage of your cookie consent score, and that's a score that the platform automatically calculates, which means what is the percentage of consent you have across all the cookies that you deploy on your page. You also have the total number of visitors on your page. That means the total number of consent you should have gotten. And you also have the application part. The application part, as far as I understand, is from the market we are at. It's a specific feature that we have in Palqee. I'm not entirely sure you're going to find that in different tools, but you may find at some point that allows you to offer the individual an extra channel to manage consent. Through the application, individuals can see what processes and what cookies your company uses about them, and they can automatically revoke or give you access to process that data through that application. But okay, we already know the processes from the data mapping, but how actually do I find the cookies from the software? So I'm going to go now to Cookie Manager, and I'm going to show you how to set up that cookie tracking in your website so we can then provide that option to individuals. Specifically in Palqee, what we have is that step-by-step how you can create that cookie banner. Something I want to highlight here, obviously, there are tons and tons of tools in the market available for you to create a cookie banners. Most of those are actually free. But it's very important that you understand the risks of using free tools at this stage because regulations are constantly changing. And something that is very important is that your cookie banner, your message in your website is tailored to the audience you are addressing it. Just to give an example, if there's a kid or child accessing your website, your cookie banner should show specifically a language or use the words that is easy to understand for that child, the children, as opposed to showing a cookie banner full of jargon that a kid would not understand. If you show a lot of jargon in your cookie banner, you're not compliant anymore. And that's why I'm saying you have to be very careful with the tool you adopt, because those free tools, some of them do not allow you to have that flexibility. So it's not so much about just showing a cookie banner, but how that cookie banner is developed, structured, and how that reacts according to who is accessing your page. So going back to this process, the first thing you want to do is to create a group, which is basically a group of websites that are going to use the same cookie banner. So how you set up that in the platform, you're going to tell that group, you're going to tell the platform what is the data protection regulation that that group of website needs to follow. And then you're going to add all the domains that are inside that group. From there, the next thing you want to do is then to create your cookie banner. So the websites are going to be scanned automatically from by the software. It's an algorithm that runs in the backend. And after that, the software is going to show you all the cookies that you have inside the websites that were scanned that you added before. And this point here, what you're going to do is you're going to review, simply because obviously the technology can help you identify and suggest a lot of things, but the technology is not your legal advisor, it's not your legal partner. So you always want to review what the technology shows to you. And that's another very important thing. You need to make sure that all those cookie banners you use allow you to review and edit whatever you want. So here what you're going to do is you want to see, maybe this cookie is not about statistics, but it's about actually necessary for me to provide my service. So I'm going to change that category and I'm going to save. After you've reviewed all the cookies, the next step then is to create the design. So here you can highly customize based on your brand. You can choose where you're going to have that pop-up. You can choose what type of font, colors, etc. You can also choose what image or what widget is going to appear on your website. You can use our predefined widgets, or you can also upload your own image if you have one. So it's very customizable, so you can easily implement your own branding. You can also choose not to display any widget if you want to. And finally, the declaration part, which is what I mentioned before, how the declaration is going to be displayed. If it's easy to understand, if you really need to include all this text or not, that's up to you and depends on how you want to implement that functionality. Once you have the visuals done, the next step then is the legal part of that cookie banner. One of the things that I think is very important to have is different languages. Obviously, you never know who is going to access your website. You never know if they understand the language, first and foremost. So you have the option to add as many languages as you want. And that language is going to be a
Hey, Andra, can you hear me? I think we lost your audio. Just 1 second, guys. Let me check what's going on. Andra? We still can't hear you. Andra? We still can't hear you. Okay, everyone, he's logging off, but he's gonna get back soon. Yeah, once again, guys, if you have any question, just let us know. Use the Q&A section, or we can, if you want to, we can even open the microphones, and you can even talk with Andre at the end of the presentation. So just let us know what you guys want to do, okay? What question, Daniel? I just said that if you guys have any question, just let us know. You can either use the Q&A section, or if you guys, instead of writing the questions, would rather talk with Andre, just let us know. We can open the microphones. Okay.
Hi, does anybody hear me now?
Yes, we can perfectly hear you now.
All right.
Very good.
I'm very sorry for that. I think there was some problem with my Bluetooth connection. So now I'm in the speaker, so you may find a little bit different my voice. But okay, let's try to move then.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just if you can let me know where did you stop hearing me? What was the point?
Yeah, I mean, it took just 1 minute. So
All right.
I think it was step number 4, actually.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So going back then to where we paused, the cookie manager. So once you set up your cookie banner, you're gonna see here the status of that specific website. You can see that it's tracking already all the cookies you have on that page, and therefore it's gonna show to everyone who is accessing your application, or everyone that wants to access your website to manage content. They can already see here what are the cookies you're tracking and what for. Finally, in this part of the software, what we're going to show you is how to set up your page that is going to be for individuals to use. So that's, as I mentioned before, specifically from Palqee, what we offer is that app page. Once you set up your active consent module, you're going to have a customized branded page for your organization where individuals can see what processing activities you have, but also what cookie you are tracking and you're managing, so they can then allow you or not allow you to continue using that information for that specific activity. And here again, because it's very important to communicate with individuals what you're doing with that data, you can also edit what is the explanation of that process, what you want to do with the data, so they really understand what you're trying to achieve. And you can also set the renewal period. Why we allow that? Basically because for some processes, you may need to constantly update your consent or the consent from the individual. So you cannot take for granted that once they gave you consent, they're just going to allow you to use it forever. So that's very important to set that. And then the platform is going to remind you when do you need to ask again for consent. And obviously, every time you change that process information, you're going to lose consent. So you're going to have to ask again, because the information you're giving to the individual is different and they may not agree with the new information you're passing to them. Right? So publishing then the app, they're going to be able to see what are the processes and cookies and then manage their consent through that application. And I think that brings me to the end of the consent management part. So I'm going to go back to the slides now. I'm going to stop sharing and go back to the presentation. And now we're going to jump to the final module, which is data subject rights. Just 1 second. So data subject rights, what we want to do here is to, now we know what processes we have in the company, we know what data, how data is flowing, we have the whole visibility of what is happening. We also allow individuals already to give and revoke consent. And now the final part is how we're going to fulfill requests from individuals. So data subject rights, how we're going to comply with that part of the regulation. It can vary pretty much depending on what data protection regulation you have to comply with. But some of those rights are common across the board. So they need to access the data, they can ask you to delete the data, and they can also change the data. So what we do in those software is it allows you to first automatically verify the ID. And when I say verify ID, is not asking for documents, actually it's the opposite. With data minimization, the last thing you want to do is to ask for more documents. So how you can do in a better way is to confirm their ID through questions and any activity they had with your business previously. And the platform already identifies and understands those interactions and validate the ID through that application, asking individuals questions. So when they actually interact with you, their ID was already validated. But obviously, if you do not want to do that, you can always turn off that setting and you can do your own verification of ID if you wish to do so. They can also update personal identifiable information directly via the app, or if you prefer, you can embed that in your website as well. And the platform allows you to automate workflow. What does that mean? If you receive a request from an individual, oftentimes you're not able to fulfill that request by yourself simply because maybe systems are not connected or you don't really have visibility. So you have to involve process owners, you have to involve executives on that process, and it ends up being a lot of admin work to just manage that workflow until you can reply to the individual. All that workflow is automated to the platform. And finally, the creation of the report. So when the request comes in, the software is going to automatically pull the information as much as possible through the connectors and the plugins that are already deployed and pre-fill whatever it can, so you can then review and complete, kind of removing more than half of the work, as if you comparing to what you would have to do if you would go one by one in those systems to find that information. So I'm going to then go back to the platform, to the data subject rights module. Sharing my screen again. So in this section, you can see is the final module we have here on the software. We're going to see the dashboard is basically the summary of all the requests we have. We call Request Manager. And as insights, you can quickly see how many requests you receive a month, and also how many days on average it takes for your organization to reply to those requests. And that's very important in a sense that each regulation gives you a specific timeline or time frame to comply with that specific, to reply to that specific request. So that helps you to track and manage to see whether or not you are compliant with that specific regulation. Here, you're going to see automatically requests that come through if you're using the Palqee application through the application, or if you have that integrated in your website, you're going to see what is coming through your website. But obviously, you can receive a phone call or you can receive an email. And if that's not integrated with the platform, you can add manually here any subject request. So you're going to complete that subject request, who requested, what country, what is the name, what was the channel, etc. And then you're going to save. Once the request is created, then you're going to be able to track that request and fulfill. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to show you the different types of requests and how you're going to fulfill that request. So first one is data subject access request. From the moment you open that request, the platform, as I mentioned, automatically is going to track and try to put as much information together as possible. And it's going to open for you a summary of that individual. What does that mean? You can see here that 64% of the data is already automatically pulled together from the system. You can see on the left-hand side information about that individual. You can see what type of records you have on that person, what is contact, what is unique identifiers, etc. You can see a log of history, what different requests that individual sent to you in the past. And you can also see the world map here that helps you understand where the data of that person sits. And the workflow automation happens down here. You can see in this example, I have a process owner called Bernard, and MailChimp is already connected through Smart Collect. Smart Collect is basically how we call the connectors and the APIs. That means that the system can automatically collect data through those plugins, so you don't have to do anything. However, for HubSpot, there is a process called customer behavior, maybe it's an analysis process, that is not automated. So we're going to need Bernard to review that process and tell me as a DPO what information I need to send back to that customer. So I'm going to come here and send a reminder. And at this point, Bernard is going to receive an email saying that you need Bernard to tell you what information he holds about that individual. And then Bernard is going to be able to monitor through the employee dashboard that I showed you before. And as soon as Bernard completes that request, you're going to see the report is going to be 100% completed. And you don't have to do anything else. You can obviously review that report. If you have to maybe remove information that is you don't need to send, or if you just want to make sure it's compliant, you review that report. And then you can send that report to the individual. The other thing you can do here is manage data erasure, which is another access right, or sorry, another subject right, not access right, the rights to delete the data you hold about them. So in this case, the interface is pretty similar. You're going to see the same things, but obviously, obviously, if they delete all the data, you're not going to see that anymore because you also have to delete all the data about that consumer. However, depending on the legal basis or depending on the contract or the industry you operate in, you may need to hold information for longer that kind of prevails compared to data protection regulations. So it's very important that you know what information you have to delete and what information you should not delete to comply to different regulations that are not related to data protection. And why I'm saying that is because Palqee allows you to check what information you want to be deleted. And then you have the legal basis as well that tells you why you need to keep that information. And you can see process owners and everything else. And similar to the access request, here you're also going to see what can automatically be deleted and what needs to be deleted manually. So once you click erase, you're going to have to confirm you want to delete that data. Again, because you need to make sure there is no conflicting regulation behind that activity. And then it's going to show you what are the process owners that are going to need to delete manually information that the system cannot delete automatically. So they're going to be notified, and then you're going to see here that is in progress. And as soon as they delete the data, the status is going to update to complete, and then the request is fulfilled. So we have the same thing to amend data, which is another right they have if they want to change, for example, their email address, or if they want to change their home address. What they're going to do is they're going to send you that request. You're going to receive the request. You have a similar interface, but here you're going to have to first search for which systems hold that data they want to change. So in this example, let's say I receive a request to change the email of an individual. So the software is going to tell me, okay, I have those 3 systems that hold email information about that individual. So I'll have to update those 3 systems. However, only 2 are automated, so there's 1 manual. So you're going to click update. The system's going to tell you what data you want to change and what is the new value of the data. And then once you input here the new value, you're going to update. And again, you still have to notify whatever process owner has to update it manually. So in every different request, there are things that can be done automatically, but there are also things that need to be done manually by process owners. And the workflow is managed automatically through the platform. And from the request subject rights, I think that's all I have to show at the moment. The ID verification, I also wanted to show here, as I mentioned before, what is already verified and what is not. You need to ensure that before you fulfill the request, you verify the ID. And that, again, depends on what process you want to use to verify that ID. That is all for the subject rights part of the software. I'm going to go back now to the presentation so we can go through the final module, which is the administration, how you manage the software itself, and how you can allow your workforce to use tools like that one. So moving to the final part, privacy operations admin. Privacy operations admin, here what you want to do is, okay, I have all those tools that allow me to streamline my privacy operations, but how do I set up this? If I have multiple companies, if I have subsidiaries or holdings in different countries, how do I visualize the data in a way that is not conflicting? Because different subsidiaries, they may have different legal requirements in terms of data protection. At the same time, how do I see alerts and how do I assess risk? Because all those modules, they're interconnected, so there's a lot of risks involved in each one of those activities. How do I have support if I need? So if I have a question about a technology itself, about the software itself, or if it's a legal question, or if it's more about processes, how do I address those questions? Is there a way I can use the platform for that? And finally, how do I manage access and how do I monitor usage of that platform within my organization? Because obviously you want to protect data, so you need to be sure that whatever tool you're using, you can have visibility of who has access to that tool and who should in the first place have or who should not have access to that tool. So right, let's jump into it. I'm gonna share my screen again for that final part. 1 second. Yeah, you should see my screen now. So I'm going sort of back to the beginning here. You can see that is a dashboard. The reason why I didn't want to show the dashboard right in the beginning is because all the data you see here in the dashboard, that's more for the DPO side, assessing risks. And I wanted to show you how you can have this data together first and foremost. So now that you already know how you can map data, how you can collect data, how you can automate data discovery, how you can manage consent, and how you can manage subject requests, that screen now makes sense. So what you see in the dashboard, that's the first screen you're going to see when you open the software. And obviously different tools are going to show you different dashboards. Some of them are going to have different information. But specifically here in Palqee, you're going to see what interviews are being conducted. On the top, you can see at the moment, I have a workforce survey that is happening, and it started on this date. It was answered by 20 people out of 150, and I have 3 new systems that were found. I can also send reminders and see what are the systems. Down here, I have a to-do list, and I think that's the most important part for the work of a DPO, which is going to give you a quick overview about the risks you are running in the organization. And those risks are divided in categories, and basically the modules we have here, we just talk you through. So for example, we have a data processing agreement that is expiring in 2 weeks from now. There's a very high risk because from the moment that agreement is not valid anymore, you are exposed. So you need to act quickly here, and the platform already tells you exactly what is that risk. You have a vendor that doesn't even have a data processing agreement, and all those different modules, they offer you different alerts. And if you click on those alerts, for example, I'm going to click here. There are 3 customers in my newsletter process that did not give me consent. There is a big breach of GDPR or whatever regulation. So you're going to go inside that process, and you're going to see consent management, what is that you need to do in that particular activity. Same thing for subject rights. And because you have all the data mapped and all the process automated in the software, you can quickly pull a report of gap analysis that's going to show you exactly at that point in time what are the gaps you have in the organization to comply with specific regulations. And that's important in a sense that you may have had your gap analysis done today, but in 6 months from now, it looks completely different. How are you going to ensure that you're still compliant? You can either obviously work with consultants, law firms, and do that work again. You can also use software, but ideally what you want to do is you want to use a mix, because I think none of the sites can do that alone, because there's a lot of knowledge you have to have about the regulation itself, but there's also a lot of activities and tasks that you have to automate in order to not spend a lot of time in manual work and activities that can be streamlined. So that's really the ideal scenario. You want to have a mix of both here. And down here, the important part is also you can interpret data in a way that affects different areas of your business. And what I mean by that is you have a graphic here that shows you the number of requests from different types. For example, data subject requests, access requests, or rights to be forgotten, or data erasure. And you can track what is the volume of requests over time. And what I mean by interact with other areas is that if your company runs an activity, a marketing activity to increase awareness about your privacy operations, what you expect is that either consumers react in the sense that they send you more requests because now they know they can, or they don't really care, they're not getting engaged. So you can see the impact of any external campaign your company is running, how that affects your privacy operations. And that's a very easy way to see that. And you can simply export this graphic and share with different areas within the business to show them exactly how they're affecting your privacy operations. And it's an easy way to get buy-in as well from stakeholders, C-level executives, because you have data to back whatever activity you're trying to implement in the organization. The other admin part, what you want to know is you want to track how your company is using the platform, because obviously you're going to have to pay at the end of the month, and you don't want to pay for things you're not using, or you don't want people to use the platform if they don't need, but also you want to manage access for safety reasons and data protection. So here what you can see is you can see the usage of each package or each module. Each tool in the market, they have different ways to manage that, but you should always look for tools that allow you to easily and quickly track the usage. So you can monitor and understand, and once you reach the limit of the package you are in, you can opt either to remove, to reduce the usage, so you don't have to go to the next package, or you can upgrade, and depending on your budget, on your privacy strategy within the business, you can quickly manage that as well. And finally, inside the company settings, you have different options here, but I'm just going to go through the main ones, what I talked you through before in the slide, which is managing multiple companies. So if I'm an international business and I have subsidiaries, and I do not want to mix individuals from different geographies because companies have to comply with different regulations, so I'm going to set up different companies here. And you, if you're a global DPO, or even if you are offering a DPO as a service type of service to your consumers, you can manage different clients across the same login and the same platform. So you're going to create those different companies, and you can switch accounts, as you can see here. And from the moment you switch accounts, all the data you see in the software is going to be related to that company. You can see the logo on the top left here. That's the company I'm logged in at the moment. So that allows you to have a broader overview of all your subsidiaries, your clients, or whoever you want to manage at this point. You can also manage your DPO information, because you want, again, as I said, on the employees page, they're gonna see right away your information. So you want them to have your contact details to communicate whatever they need, the regions of your clients or your customers, where they are, and finally the permissions. So the permissions here, you're gonna see per company. So in this case, I'm seeing the permissions of this holding company I'm logged in. Who are the employees who have access to this instance of that data privacy operations software? So I can see I have 4 people at the moment with access. Those are admin. Those are not admin, but you can still edit. And this one is just read access. When they were registered, when they access, last time they accessed, and you can also print permission logs. So anything related to security, you can manage through this screen. And I think that, the last point I wanted to show, I almost forgot that, is in terms of help and support. If you're working with large and international software, you should be able to have an international community. And that's very helpful also because you want to reach to professionals in the industry that are working across the board, so they have a broader picture of what's happening in different geographies. But you also have, at the same time, you want to have technical support. What I mean by that is, if you have any issue with, I don't know, printing a report, or the plugin is not working the way it should, so you can quickly have support here. You just type in your question, you should have FAQ. But you also have technology and legal partners, what we call support partners. We work with different types of partners, and I also believe that different softwares in the market work with partners as well, which allows you to quickly reach out to them. So for example, on the legal side, if you have a question but you do not have a legal partner yet, you can quickly come through the platform and find a legal partner that has a specialty in your sector or in your region, and contact them through the platform. That way you're never alone, and also your employee, your workforce, knows who they can reach out to in case they need help in different areas. And I think that ends what I wanted to show. There's a lot more, but obviously we have limited time here, and also that different platforms have different settings. So I just wanted to cover the most common ones, so we have a good understanding of how to use those platforms in case you decide to adopt one. And yeah, and what we can expect from value working as a DPO with